Ruskin, Maida Wassermann, Liz Phillips, and our newest committee member, Lenore Fogel, for helping create this program today. Judaeans in La La Land is the last of the series of alumni events for this year. We are spotlighting what CYJ alumni are doing in the world and hope that you have enjoyed hearing about their stories. Recordings of previous events are available on Facebook or the CYJ Midwest YouTube page. Before we hear from our special guests, Abbe and Isaac Feder, and our moderator, Brian Jaffee, I'd like to introduce Robin Anderson, Director of CYJ Midwest, to give us an update on camp. Robin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Anderson. I'm the Director of CYJ Midwest. I think I've met many of you guys, and if I haven't, welcome to the program. So I just wanted to share that, when I speak to a future camp parent, one of the first things I share is how no matter who you ask at camp, they will say that CYJ is a family. And Midwest alumni feel the same way about their experiences. And meeting the alumni throughout the years, there are memories of friendship, including many of you on here that probably talk about how your camp friends are your best friends still today. Memories about learning about Israel and Zionism, which is why so many of our alumni join the Israeli army and make Aliyah later on in life. Memories of learning about Judaism, including the alum who shared with me just last year that was why they went to rabbinical school. And now 30% of our community this summer will be second generation CYJers, 30%. It is so exciting to speak with alumni who are excited for their children to experience young Judea and specifically the Hamish feel of CYJ Midwest. Now, camp has the same feel. However, 2021 is a bit of a different ballgame in terms of programming. I promise Maccabiyah, the Sofim, and Shir Eshketa, with probably the same songs, are still around. But just to share with you some of our exciting updates, we have a new hammock village. We have an expanded archery range.
This is talking about camp.
This is talking about camp, yes.
Oh, you can hear me, sorry.
We have a new agriculture program that includes chickens that our new assistant director, Aaron, is putting together. We have a maker space. We have 3 speedboats for tubing and water skiing, which I hear from many of our alumni that is a little bit too fancy for what they remember at camp. We are part of a program to bring more mental health support to both campers and staff. We have over 260 campers and staff waiting to join the ranks of people who have been to Wapaka. And so we are just working on some new and exciting things for this summer. We would love for the alumni, if you guys would love to be supportive of any of these programs, to let me know. If you want to add something to our program this summer, please be in touch. And now, I don't really have to do an introduction, but I would love to introduce Brian Jaffee, the president of the CYJ Midwest Board of Directors.
Thanks so much, Robin. And let me just say just a brief word of thanks also to Ellen and Maida and Rachel and Liz and Lenore and the entire Alumni Engagement Committee. This series was a really fabulous idea, and it was just what we needed in the midst of a really challenging year to reconnect with each other and to just sort of touch base with a place, a foundation in our lives, a community of people that obviously had a huge impact on our youth and continues to have an impact on us today. And for me, this series has really been just a great opportunity, each event, to reconnect with old friends, with people that I haven't seen in a really long time. And I have to say that seeing Isaac and Abbe Feder again after, I guess it's more than 20 years, guys, has been a real thrill for me. You know, Isaac and Abbe, you two were among my favorite people, you know, when we were at camp together. And it's just really great to see you again, and we're just so grateful that you're on this call and being featured in this event. And I really hope that today is just the beginning of a more enduring reconnection, and we'll see each other in California and Cincinnati or wherever life takes us. So in just a minute or two, we're going to ask you to introduce yourselves. But as we get underway here, let's just watch a clip of a movie that you worked on together, just to get a sense of what you've been up to in Hollywood. All right, so we probably won't show that one to the Ofarim, but it looks like a lot of fun, and it's that was a clip from Sex Ed, which again is a movie you collaborated on together. And with that as framing, our tradition here is to let the featured alumni introduce themselves and just kind of tell their story. And so as we get the conversation started, I want to encourage everyone who's on the Zoom today. As you're listening to the conversation, if you've got a question for Isaac and Abbe, just put the question in the chat. We'll curate the questions and I'll serve as moderator and ask them for you. And then at the end of the hour, we'll just keep the Zoom open for 10 or 15 minutes. Isaac and Abbe will stay on and we'll get a chance to interact more personally, more directly. So with that, Isaac and Abbe, if you could just take a few minutes just to reintroduce yourselves. What's your connection to Young Judea, to CYJ Midwest? Tell us how you met. In other words, both of you have this history with CYJ Midwest, but you actually found each other despite that shared connection. So tell us your story.
Yeah. I can't stop giggling inside. We haven't seen that Sex Ed trailer in quite a while. It was a fun flashback. Okay, hi, I'm Abbe. We are so grateful to be here as well, and we thank each and every one of you for making this possible. So my time at CYJ Midwest physically was quite short, but probably had one of the biggest impacts on my life. So I was a Sprout Laker and then a TYer. I am second generation Young Judean, actually third generation. My grandparents, my grandmothers were all wonderful Hadassah women and very instrumental in getting Young Judea going. My parents went to Tel Yehuda. They both went on year course. I was a Sprout Laker, then a TYer. I went on year course. And one beautiful summer before I did MH at TY, I worked first session in the kitchen with Ellen, with many of my closest friends who I'd met on Machon in Israel, who happened to be from the CYJ Midwest camp. And through that became very close friends with many people that Isaac had grown up with. And so I had heard Isaac Feder's name thrown around a million times. I knew his younger brother, but I never directly knew him. So I will let him tell you his little story, and then we'll let you know where they intersect.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Isaac Feder. I'm thrilled to be here today. I want to go through and see all the names are awesome. But I'm Chicagoan. I went to CYJ Midwest for the first time in 1990. Ellen was my first madricha at Maida. And I was at CYJ Midwest from 90 through 94 as a camper, and then on Sevet. Did Avodah, did Sevet the summer of 97. Seminole, huge part of my life and growing up, no question about it. Did year course. Went back to Chicago for college, lived there with year course friends when I was at college at Northwestern. So like that was a Young Judea hub for us during college where people would come to Chicago.
We both knew from very early ages we wanted to pursue life in the arts. I always wanted to be an actress forever. Isaac always wanted to be a director. And so we both ended up in LA, not knowing each other, but had so many friends in common who would always be like, it makes no sense that you two don't know each other. And, I would have a friend come and visit who knew Isaac, and Isaac would be out of town, or he would have somebody come and visit, but he couldn't meet up, but I met up with that person. So we just didn't meet. But everyone kept saying, like, of all of our Judean group, you two are the only ones that ended up in LA. At some point, you must meet. So our dear friend, Michael Plastock from the East Coast came to visit, and I was hanging out with him, and he was like, I'm going to this very famous gay bar called the Abbe, perfectly named, and do you want to come with me? And I was like, definitely. And he also asked Isaac, and it was like a Wednesday night, and Isaac was just really wanted to see Michael. I don't think Isaac was, hopping gay bars at the time, but he said yes. And so we met at a gay bar. And
Michael told me that Abbe was going to be there, and I had never met her, and I wanted to meet her. So, yeah.
The story's a little different for me, but we'll okay. So we met at a gay bar, and then Michael was in town that whole weekend, and we had plans all weekend long. We'd say, let's do a game night. Let's go out to a different one. So we just became really, when you come from Young Judea, your shared history's just there, right? You fast forward a million years because you know you have such a similar background of values and, you know, people and ethical, you know, moral. You just bring yourself closer immediately because you have this shared camp experience. So we were fast friends, and basically the rest is history. But that's
we were
how
friends for like an insufferable summer, and then we started dating like in the fall. So, yeah.
It must have felt like a decade for you, Isaac.
It was
you
the
know,
longest. It was,
empathize.
yes, it was
Yeah.
the longest. Brian, exactly.
But wasn't it worth it? I mean, it was worth the wait. You know, Abby's
Worth the
worth it.
wait.
But this is the thing, when you have so many shared friends, I was like, if I'm going to date this guy, like, you know, he's real nice. Do I want a nice guy? And do I want to date him, or is it more than that? Because we have all these shared people that we didn't want to ruin anything, you know.
I was less worried about ruining anything.
And I was wondering if you could say a little more about what you mentioned, Abby. You know, you talked about, obviously the shared people is a big deal, but like the shared memories, the shared values, shared ethics. What are some examples of the things that you feel like you both took from camp and from Young Judea, where like, this is just who we are together. We can finish each other's sentences. We share something just because we have this shared experience.
I mean, Judaism is always central to me in my life for sure, and like also even specifically that, you know, Jordan and I grew up and our house was kosher growing up, and kashrut was really important to our family, and that was something that was a nice bonus if like I met a woman who that was also important to her, and so like that's like a nice auto thing. Also like understanding that, yeah, I have a younger brother who lives in Israel, and going to Israel is a priority for like me and my family. It's a nice thing that like I also don't have to like backtrack or explain it all.
Religion in general, right, we all know can be one of the most challenging parts of finding your mate, because it's not just religion and marriage, but you know, you marry the person's family. So knowing that we had grown up with similar levels of commitment to Judaism felt like you just don't have to have those hard conversations. That's like that was a big thing for both of us. Again, for me, keeping kosher, it's such a very specific one that so many people, it doesn't resonate for. So just having that shared was like, oh, great. That's just off the table. We can worry about all the other things, you know?
Right.
Plenty of to worry about.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that both of you growing up knew somehow that you wanted to be working in the arts. And I'm wondering, you know, was there someone in particular that had an influence on you in your decision to make a career in the entertainment industry? And now that you're working in Hollywood, is it everything that you imagined it would be, or is it totally different?
So I definitely always wanted to do it. I started by making videos even in junior high school and stuff like that with a cousin. I have an uncle, my dad's brother, who's a journalist in Chicago who wrote about television and radio, and we would often watch movies together. That was just always happening, and it just got more and more. It was just clearly that's what I loved since probably 12 or 13. Did it for undergrad, did it for grad school, way overeducated in film stuff. And I would say there was never anything that I was excited about or motivated or wanted to do as much. And even though I took like a little pause to move to New York with mostly friends from Young Judea after college to have that experience, like LA was an inevitability to get here. And I moved here for grad school, and I've been working in film for 15 years now here. And for the most part, it's been really, really good and really exciting, but it's also really, really volatile and has tested everything on us as a couple, because we can get into more specifics of that as we move along. But there are things that I absolutely love about what I do and love it. And there's things, especially this year and COVID and how hard it has been to make things, and most of the things that I make at the budget level that I make them have been paused. It's absolutely been like take a look and take stock of things. I mean, I would say sometimes I feel like I picked my career as a 18 or 19-year-old, and that's a real frustration when you're not 18 or 19. But then there are moments where, like, I'm very excited about the Oscars next weekend. I mean, I worked on a project that is nominated, and that has never happened before, and that's really special. So you take the good with the bad, like any of it. So those are some of them.
You're talking about the Borat movie. The Borat movie is nominated for several Oscars. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about Borat. We can talk about how that project happened too.
I'm
But
sure everyone wants to hear fun Borat stories, which we can get to.
Right.
But
so that's it's always been what I've wanted to do and pursue.
Yeah.
And for me too, I always wanted to be an actress. I come from a very dramatic family, let's say. My grandmother is one of 4 sisters. All 4 sisters are very big and loud, and they sing, and we've always just like singing and dancing. It's just always been a part of our family. And I think really when you boil it down, when you say to someone, did you always want a life in the arts? It's like, what we all really should be asking is like, are you willing to give your life to living that volatile lifestyle? And it's certainly not for everyone. And that was also something that's very shared between us, that we were committed to figuring that out together. And it's definitely not always easy, but in moments of frustration, when Isaac might say like, I should have just been a doctor. And
not just.
I should have just saved lives instead of this movie business. And I'll say like, I wouldn't have wanted to marry a doctor. And the truth is that Hollywood is such a specific, images and ideas come to mind. But when you move to LA and you're living your life on a daily basis, it's a very different picture. And I think we have both worked really hard to find meaning in our life that does not just revolve around what that Hollywood picture might mean. So that, like, knowing that, getting through the trenches with each other in that way, sometimes I'm on a major high and he's on a major low, or vice versa. And like having to figure out how to be there for each other is hard, but part of what I actually love about the day-to-day life of the La La Land experience. And again, because we had that shared foundation, so much of the rest of it has become the part that we have to navigate together instead of that other, instead of religion, or how Jewish do we want to raise our kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the part I'm curious about. And I'm struck by the juxtaposition between our last 2 alumni programs. So, we just had this program with John Lowe and Dan Vogel and Alex Charney-Cohen, 3 military veterans, some Judeans in the military, an industry in which it probably feels like no one is Jewish, and you sort of stick out like a sore thumb as a Jew. And now we're talking about, Judeans in La La Land, where I'm sure most days it feels like everyone is Jewish that you work with. But, I guess what the 2 situations have in common is that you have to make intentional choices about, how your Jewish identity is going to play out in the workplace. So, I guess the question for you is how has that played out for you? How is that shared foundation that you described earlier informed, what projects you want to work on, who you want to work with? You've worked with Sacha Baron Cohen, who's got a really strong Jewish identity, comes through in everything. And I'm sure you've also worked with Jews in the business that really downplay their Jewishness. So, how has it informed the choices of the art that you want to create?
I mean, I remember even specific, like when I was in grad school here, and one of my classmates said, "Isaac, you're so effing lucky you're Jewish." I mean, no one had ever, like, not. And I grew up in like a strong Jewish community, but no one had ever said that to me, like through that lens, and it struck me and sat with me. So that was interesting. And yes, like this is a very Jewish city, and that's one of the things I love about Los Angeles is like it is. I think it's pretty easy to be Jewish here. It also is really there's just so many different things on the spectrum, like of Jewish religious observance too. So and a lot of also like the fact that I had lived in Israel, and I'm thankful that like I did okay in Ulpan there. Like my first job out of grad school was with an Israeli filmmaker. We would use and speak a lot of Hebrew, and we're doing a lot of work with bringing Israeli projects and talent here. And that was something that, came much more naturally than even if I was just an American Jewish person, like many of my colleagues and friends. Like I do feel a stronger connection to Israelis and working with them. I've done a lot of stuff with also Jewish Federation as a strong presence here, and Los Angeles Jewish Federation does things with Israeli or Tel Aviv, Los Angeles film partnerships. And I was lucky to participate in some of that and have met and worked with Israeli filmmakers and lots of things. Also, Israeli television is really not only hot right now, but has been pretty hot for the last 10 years here, both in scripted and unscripted television. So all those things are a leg up. I will also say, like, that's changing quite a bit now. I mean, I am a white dude in movies, and directing assignments that are often have gone to me to direct shows on Comedy Central and I make a lot of comedy television, like, that were happening more frequently even 2 years ago. There's just much more of a push, understandably so, for more diversity hires to happen on these kind of open directing jobs. And like, even though I'm a Jewish dude, I'm not a diverse hire here. And that is a unique thing to kind of wrap my head around. And like, I definitely have like a chip on my shoulder about that, because like, I don't want to just make things about the Jewish American experience. And who does? I mean, I do like telling stories about being Jewish here, but like, it's not the only thing. And I think it's really limiting and pigeonholing and short-sighted. So we can get into all that too, but it's informed all of it. And, you know, having a connection to being Jewish and in Israelis and speaking Hebrew on set, like I do have to do with Sasha, I've done with other people too, is like an advantage. So I hope that answers some of it.
Yeah, it's great.
And I would say that I find
ahead.
that the Jewish, well, two things. One, the Jewish, you know, mafia of LA is far more for behind the camera than in front of the camera. So like being Jewish as an actress, really never, people were more surprised to find out that I was Jewish than it helping me or moving me one way or another. But I will also say that we belong to a synagogue in LA, and we can get more into that too, if you want to or not, but that has a very camp feel to it. And it does include a lot of entertainment people. And so if and when possible, we all try to work together for the sake of the synagogue and also outside of, you know, in the Hollywood world. There are so many, so that's like a really weird part about LA is like, you know, which, I don't want to say celebrities, but like which people from the Hollywood world go to which synagogue. And it's like a very weird part of it.
But it's not gross. Like I'm just like, it's not
more
like
in
you're
terms
going
of like
to schmooze people up.
Well, at least not at ours, it's not. We can't speak to the other ones. It's really not. But there are a lot of opportunities within that sort of more confined community to work together or find oh, I need a director for X. They must have a shared, you know, it's again, almost like camp. There's like that shared, if you all go to this one particular synagogue, you have a shared understanding and a shared community and a shared experience. So there's like a shorthand that can happen and in a positive way.
Yeah, go ahead, Isaac. You were going to say.
I mean, it's like anything. It takes a long time to make old friends. It takes a long time to build a community here. I mean, most people when they move to LA, it's like give it 10 years really to give yourself a shot at. And I think that's, you know, between 5 and 10 is pretty accurate. And you have to naturally make connections and relationships and find people that you really trust and want to work with. And there is a lot of bullshit and and things that happen just like in any business where stakes are really high.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about the Jewish community you found out in LA. And I know that you belong to a really special congregation. And you know, you were just saying a moment ago, Abby, it on the one hand, it is filled with celebrities. I mean, you're able to like pull Josh Gad into your Purim spiel. It's like amazing. Like you've got that ability. And yet it also feels like a really organic and natural place just to, you know, for people to come together for the reasons that anyone comes together in a congregation. So yeah, tell us more about what you found.
Go ahead.
So we belong to a community called IKAR, IKAR, and ironically, Isaac and I joined the summer we met without, like, not together. We had both
it was just
joined.
all timing, you know.
Yeah, we had both joined.
Yeah.
Okay, and it is an incredibly special. I'm not sure where he's going. Okay.
That was such an Isaac Feder move, by the way. Like the movements and the grace are still there all these years later. I love it.
That's classic Isaac.
It's Thursday.
So our rabbi, whose name is Sharon Brous, she's married to a wonderful guy named David, and they were Ramah people. So they were like East Coast Ramah people. So they had this major shared background, understanding, community, and they started this incredible. I keep saying community because they don't call it a synagogue. So this community called IKAR, And there was in the beginning like a very camp feel, people who wanted to find, you know, it wasn't about whether you got dressed up for the high holidays. If you weren't showing up, who cares? Or you didn't want to feel uncomfortable because you only, you know, the prayers are in Hebrew and you don't really speak Hebrew and you grew up Reform and you had a horrible experience last time you were in synagogue. Like nobody cared about any of that. It was like, let's just find a way to all get together and figure out what is meaningful to you as a person, not everybody together. And so it's non-denominational and it's just post-denominational. And it's just, it does, and I mean this in the most positive way, it does feel like a very camp experience.
Of course it's positive.
Well, I just mean it's not, whatever. Yes, it's positive in terms of like, there's music, you know, if you can't connect through prayer, then let's connect through music. If you can't connect through music, then let's connect through schmoozing. And there's all these different through lines to just make sure we all show up and become a community for each other. And that it's very special in LA, I feel, to have this, I can't even tell you, for Shivas or births, I mean, to go through the life cycle events with a group of people. I grew up very active in my synagogue and still never had that kind of experience. And it really is about the relationships and the connection, and all the other stuff comes second or third. And it feels like we belong to like the best camp that we can go to as long as they'll be in business, you know, which hopefully is forever.
And there was something else with the synagogue thing. Oh, I mean, something to keep in mind is, I mean, Abbe and I are here without our folks, you know, without our parents, without that immediate family. And like, you do make, you know, friendships like our family that you choose. We can talk about all those cliches, et cetera, but like, that is, you know, a big part of finding a community and support while we're trying to raise kids and, you know,
have kids,
and have,
raise kids,
you know, all the things that you want with an active, you know, vibrant Jewish community, family feeling that can provide that. Because I mean, especially after this year.
Yeah, and I say, like, another thing about this year is that IKAR is one of those places that has become nationally known, and that, you know, during the pandemic, a lot of people are finding IKAR and 6th and I in DC and the Kitchen and, you know, all these places, you know, where like I can be in Cincinnati in my jammies and I can, you know through streaming. And I'm wondering, like, as congregants who were there from well before the pandemic, have you felt a change in that, or is does that just feel like audience to you?
No, it's been a big change, and I'm pretty active in the broadcast, whatever that IKAR is doing, and they recognize that it has increased membership and it increased that there are members now who live in Cincinnati, who live in the UK,
London,
who live all over, and the community wants to, you know, keep them as part of the community. So I think that there will be a camera component even as we start to resume services together. And I've been on some, you know, committees about trying to figure out how to do that, because like, also honestly, I still do like it to feel Shabbos stick when you go, you know, and it's different to have cameras going in. So like finding a way to still make people feel connected and present, but also not obtrusive to like an authentic Shabbat experience is something that's going to have to be continually worked on. But it has helped. It helps with the community. It helps with fundraising. It helps with all those things. And like, I want to keep helping them do that.
Whereas like for me, I couldn't care less if there's a camera crew in there on Shabbat. I think it's amazing. And Isaac thinks it's amazing too, but we have differing opinions on it, and they will go out of their way to make both of us feel comfortable.
We'll try.
And that is what.
But you never make everybody feel comfortable.
Right.
It's still Jewish something. You know,
right.
Come on.
But that is like the piece that feels like the camp piece of it too, because it's more about the people who are there than the rules that they make. You know.
Right. So I want to switch gears, and I'm sure, you know, with questions from the audience, we'll come back to the, you know, to movies and television. But I want to ask you about your podcast, Maculate Conception, which for the community that's gathered here today, if you have not yet checked it out, I strongly encourage you to find it. You can find the first episode on your podcast apps. You can subscribe to the whole thing through Audible. It's a magnificent piece of work. A very, you know, moving account of the struggle that you two had with infertility. And you've referenced your kids, so we know that the story has a happy ending. But you can also just hear in the podcast how harrowing the experience was to get to that to that happy ending. And so first of all, thank you for creating it. And this week is actually National Infertility Awareness Week, so it's kind of perfect that we're having this conversation today. And just curious, I mean, podcasts have certainly become a staple of the media we consume. This is such a powerful and beautifully done story. What made you decide to pursue this particular medium to tell that story?
Thank you. Thank you for that. You should be our PR person all around.
Yeah, we could use it. Well, what happened, I had a job a few years ago working as the head of development for a guy who used to be a Daily Show producer. His name's Dan Taberski, and not Jewish, neither here nor there, but loved working with him. We really had a connection. And when I was working with him, he was making a documentary on Richard Simmons, which a few years later became a podcast very early on when podcast stuff started to go, called Finding Richard Simmons. And we were no longer working together, but I had lunch with him and I told him how much I loved it and it was so great and how did he decide to do that. And I remember he was shooting it and why he switched. He's like, there was a lower barrier to entry to making and releasing an audio doc. And he's like, Isaac, if you have a story that you just want to make and you don't want all the cameras and you don't want because all that stuff adds crew and people and time and money, etc. It's like, get an audio recorder and just start rolling on something. And I also really liked the verite documentary portion of it where you're following him along this journey. And I had made a bunch of documentaries at this point. I'd already made a feature doc about sports betting and started making films for Vice, and documentaries were just a much more accessible entry point for me in film and television when we started. So I'd already made things in this space. And then Abby and I were going through this and were basically told it wasn't likely we were going to be able to have children. I'm like, maybe this is what we should start rolling on.
We were just talking a lot. We had nowhere to put our grief. We were carrying a daily grief that unless you've been through it, no one really understands. And we were like, the people we love the most didn't know how to deal. Like, we felt disappointed in the way everyone was dealing with it. And we were like, it can't be everyone, right?
It was us.
It has to be us. And so we have to find a way to teach people and talk about the way you deal with your close loved ones who are going through this. Because
or not even teach people, but just share some of
the story,
intimacies of like how rough this is on a couple going through it.
Right, or
specifically
like,
us.
At all costs, people would avoid talking with us about it, which of course, who wants to bring up, hey, still saw you a year ago, still no kids, eh? And people just wouldn't acknowledge it at all. And that felt very painful as well. And we just didn't know where to talk about this or process it. And there was something very intimate about just a recorder where we felt like no holds barred. We could just openly talk. And by the way, we had no clue what was ever going to happen with it. So it was permission for us to really just be very honest, because it was just the three of us,
diary.
Me,
it was like
Isaac, and the recorder, and it was a diary.
And also, it didn't need cameras in my mind. Like, so much of it was in our bedroom late at night and at a doctor's office, or giving shots in a bathroom, or
talking in a bedroom late at night, just to give a picture.
But
thank you for that clarification, Abby. That was important. Yeah.
Yes.
Like
this picture is us actually carrying 11 embryos from one clinic to another clinic. It happens to have been a Valentine's Day, and we were just like, okay, we're spending our Valentine's Day driving embryos around LA. Where do we talk about that, right? And so that's why we did the podcast, and that's why it has been a very meaningful podcast to a lot of people. Spoiler, that's when I was pregnant. But we would get noticed.
I wanted to renew our vows when, like, if it ever had, like, when Abby was like crazy pregnant, and that was a fun.
It's a great picture.
Yeah,
it was a fun night.
Anyway, so that's sort of the why we did it, and we had no idea what would happen with the podcast, but it happened to have gotten into the hands of a production company. And
that's actually a little bit of a story too. I mean, I was at a party for grad school, and a friend of mine was like, we were, having beers and schmoozing, and one of our friends was nominated for their first Oscar. It was like a great time for everybody to get together, and it had been like 10 years after school, and he's like, but why don't you and Abby have kids? And I said to him, like, I'm a little drunk, and I also love you lots. So I'm going to tell you, don't ask people that. And here's what we're going through. And it was nice, and I told him,
and it turned into a blessing that he asked.
He worked at a company called Starburns, which does all the Rick and Morty cartoons and does animation for all these television shows. He's like, we just started a podcast department. I want you to meet my head of it, because I had clips at that point of what we were going through. And we went for a meeting, Abby and me there, and played like a clip from what we had been rolling. And they were like, yeah, we want to make your podcast. We want to pay to finance you guys coming in to record and making what became our first season of the show. So we made 6 episodes that were free on iTunes, and it really did very well. And they ended up selling season 2 to Audible, which is why now all 12 episodes of this limited series are exclusively on Audible now. But like that, again, happened through friends that you made after a long time, and it happened in a natural way. It wasn't like agents setting up pitch meetings and all that stuff. I mean, that can happen too, but it's much more common to like come from real friendships and relationships with people. That just comes from taking time. That just comes from spending time.
Yeah, no, it was a really brave choice, because you went from, the one extreme of, like having all this bottled up and no one to talk to about it to, pretty much the polar opposite of putting it all out there. I mean, you committed to just full transparency from the beginning. And so, these heartbreaking scenes of you, breaking down and crying with each other, sometimes screaming at each other, then, embracing each other. And it's like, was there ever a moment when you were like, oh, like we have to put everything out there, like this, we've made a terrible mistake, like, or did was it
funny. It's a really great question. Well, yeah, he was more, in general, he's a more
I'm not an on-camera person. I'm a little bit more shy.
But you were very open. In fact, we get a lot of comments that there are now a lot more podcasts out there about infertility, but it's never from the man's perspective. And we get a lot of love for how open and honest Isaac was, and I admire that in him too. But what's crazy is actually we were told we wouldn't have kids. That's why we made the podcast. We sold it to the production company, and we're working with them, and we got pregnant. And I can't say it was a surprise, because it was with IVF, our 12th round. But it was a shock, because this was like we know it's not going to work. We're going to tweak a couple things just so we can say we did it, and we're going to move on. And it worked. And I will never forget when we told our production team that we were pregnant. It was literally 12 minutes of them being like, are you serious? Are you serious? Are you serious? I mean, on and on and on.
Maybe not 12.
It was a long time. And that was actually when we became much more private. It was like I was fine to open up and show the vulnerability and whatever was going on with the infertility, but then we created this community of supporters around infertility. I had a lot of survivor's guilt about telling them that I was pregnant and with twins. And, we would get notes from people saying they were praying for us. So it became really crazy timing, because the podcast didn't end up coming out until about a month before we were giving birth. And we would get notes, we're praying for you. And I'd be like, thanks, I'm 34 weeks with twins, or I wouldn't even say it. And so we really, almost to a point of regret, we became a little more private during that time. And we did not have a smooth pregnancy. I was totally healthy, but we ended up having to do a termination for medical reasons. We were originally pregnant with 3, which is also really not talked about, and something I talk about more now that it's over. But in the time, I was so terrified every minute of my pregnancy after what we'd been through that I couldn't talk about it. And I wish at the time I had talked about it more in the podcast, because I think it would do a big service for people going through it. But overall, absolutely zero regrets about anything we talked about on that podcast. My only regret is that in the very last time, I made Isaac take a sympathy shot of nothing, just like give himself one shot after I had probably taken close to 2,000. And then I'm like, why did I wait this whole time? He should have been taking sympathy shots all along. So that's my number one only regret. And it took him about 20 minutes to get up the nerve to be like,
all right,
okay, and do it. And I was like on shot 2,000, like blindfolded,
Amazing.
So that's my only regret.
It's a great delivery room photo, and like you could just like all of the joy and the relief, and just the release is there. And if you don't mind, can you tell us about the kids?
Yeah, they're about to be 2.5.
We have a son. They're 1 minute apart. They're twins. We have a son. His name is Malachi. We call him Mookie. He really likes Mookie.
Nice.
And our daughter is Amalia, and she we also call her Molly, but she pretty much sticks with Amalia. And
they're great.
They're great.
They're great. But they're chaos, just like any kids are chaos. And there's also mixed feelings there. It's like sometimes you feel like you can't complain about all the parent things you want to vent and complain about because you wished for it so hard, and but still we're parents and we're tired, and it's normal. And but it is, I mean, that the experience and the trauma from our journey lasts in every single day of what we go through. A lot of people would say, once they're here, you're going to forget everything. And I will never forget what we went through. And that's okay. Like, I have since become a fertility coach and have made this my business. So I deal with this all day, every day, not all day, but a lot of the time. And I have no doubt that it's part of the reason we went through it. And I can only do it because we got a happy ending, which doesn't happen for everybody. So I think we're definitely old parents. And we feel it sometimes.
LA, most people are old parents.
That's
so
true.
We're not.
Yeah.
But we what was I gonna say? We're old parents, but we're also. I think I personally am a much more patient parent than I might have been had it been an easy road. I don't fancy myself a patient person in general. But I do think I have a different sense of gratitude that comes with it. That I might not have had otherwise. So
yeah, it's a definer of my life too.
So how do you think parenthood will change your identity as artists?
It already is. It was something that I was scared about, honestly. I mean, even in terms of this past year, where often I'm on the road quite a lot, and that was something to navigate their first year of life. I was really away, and Abbe was solo with the twins for.
Let me just be clear. He was gone for 3 months making Borat, and I was working full time, pursuing my acting, and home with 8-month-old twins. So they went hard to daycare. Like, I wasn't home with them, but that was insane for me.
But thankfully there was no resentment, right? I mean,
none, not a moment.
I milked it for a good year. Like, I'd be like, I need a 20-minute nap, and he was like, I can't right now, and I'm like, really? You were gone for 3 months, or whatever. Like, I used it as long as I could. The time's moved on now.
But I mean, even this past year where we've all been sheltering in place and totally home, it's been really special, and I've really appreciated it. And I never would have. I mean, I haven't missed a bath night or a bedtime much at all until this week, for the first time in 14 months. And so that's been really special. And yeah, I know it's going to impact our decisions. I know it's going to impact my creative decisions and things I want to do and projects I can take and how much money I can take for those projects or not too. I mean, truthfully. So yeah, all that stuff changes. You can take more risks. We've been taking lots of risks.
Yeah.
Isaac, I'm so curious, by the way, that obviously the Borat movie is one of the more prominent things you've worked on, but you've also worked on one of the most prominent series in the last decade, which is the ESPN's 30 for 30 documentaries, and you did the 30 for 30 short on AC Green. But I'm just so curious as to why you chose him as a subject.
Yeah,
Can I just
sure.
They chose Isaac because he had just done sex ed. This is like the most ironic thing. Like, when you think
it's a
virgins,
good Hollywood story.
Yeah, like when you think virgins, think Isaac Feder. Because he had just done
building a real name for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had just done sex ed about a virgin sex ed teacher, and was very involved. Isaac in another life was like definitely a huge sports star and also a crazy gambler. So those worlds kind of
different physical body for a sports star.
Yes.
So different, yeah.
Well, yeah, past life, okay. So those worlds kind of all collided through, again, relationships, through somebody he knew that really also, like, he and this other person would watch sports together and bet on sports together for fun. And so that person knew that this, they wanted to make a story about AC Green, and they were like, virgin, sports, Isaac.
it's a little bit more specifically what I had made 2 features at this point, the sports betting documentary feature and a bunch of stuff for Vice about betting, and then sex ed. And Adam McKay was going to direct the first 30 for 30 comedy. And when it finally got greenlit, Adam McKay got The Big Short. And he's like, I don't have time to make this short film about AC Green. So this friend of mine that Abby mentioned, who said, I've got a buddy who made a doc on sports betting and made this movie about a virgin. I met with Adam McKay and got the job. And that's why Will Ferrell narrates it. So
because Will
ESPN
Ferrell and
agreed
Adam
with
McKay work together.
Right,
because I feel
collaborators, right.
Yeah, so ESPN really wanted Adam McKay to make this short, and I got lucky that he wasn't available and he was still gonna produce it for me to direct it. And it made me a Laker fan, and I loved making that film, and it was a great opportunity.
That's great. It's amazing how the dots connect. So bringing it back to camp, curious about a few things, like, who you're still in touch with, from your network. Curious, like, just talking about connecting the dots from your camp experiences to now. Are there times when you're like working on a project in a writer's room and you're like, oh, I know exactly how to do that because, I planned a Hatzaga, or, are there any Hatzagot you can remember, by the way, from the mid 90s that were seminal influences on your artistic career?
I'm thinking, you go.
I mean, one of the first Hatzagot I did when I was at Sprout Lake when I was like 9, it was a parody on a chorus line, and I don't remember what part I played, but the songs from that Hatzagot do still come into my head every time I hear a chorus line with the like Jewish version, like, right. And they'd be like, the Baal Shem Tov, look, the Baal Shem Tov. Like, I can remember where in a chorus line we said the same. It's really crazy what your brain does in that way.
I remember Hatzagot. I mean, I know that I did not direct our Machon Hatzaga. That was Jenna Goldenberg and Kenny Piper who directed that.
Are you bitter?
I mean, yeah, of course. No.
We've been talking about this art for the past 12 years.
Wait, I'm sorry. I just have to I'm sorry for interrupting, but let me just get this straight. You worked on a project. It's going to be nominated for the Academy Awards have nominated a project that you worked on, and you're upset that you didn't direct your Machon Hatzaga?
I'm not that upset about it, but it's great.
I just have one word for Jenna Goldenberg. Who's sorry now, Jenna? Who's sorry now?
But I mean, I also Josh Herson wrote the short story that became my thesis film in undergrad, and I loved our friendship and working with him on stuff. And yeah, I mean, even moving to New York, like the other, friends from TY and CYJ and Year Course who were working in film, we definitely stick together and check in with each other and try to hire each other and work together because there is that trust. Sure, you're just not gonna screw over your buddy from Young Judea things, So there's all of that. I mean, I also I didn't love performing in any of that. I just a little bit more shy, but always wanting to do it. I'm not reading them.
I stupidly started reading the chat. I know, but I want to answer everything. Okay.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I will just say I did many years on New York City Masquerade and then National Masquerade, and I know this sounds crazy, but I definitely feel like it prepared me for many jobs that I've had. Like for sure, as a teenager, I mean, I flew around as a teenager speaking places when I was 17, which has been impacted me incredibly. And yeah, I don't even know how to articulate how big of an impact that had on my life, but huge.
But I mean, also the Hatzagot, Young Judea kids are really talented and really smart and really bright and funny. And, I definitely remember being in the audience of things and being really wowed by peers, by people who could just dance and do things that I was just blown away by. So I think that really was an early start and why I wanted to start by collaborating with friends from Young Judea.
And what it really all, again, to bring it full circle, comes back to is that camp creates a safe space for you to be yourself, right? That's why we all love it, because we can go, we can be ourselves, we can feel nurtured. No matter what your self is, you find your people, and you can grow and expand and explore who you are. And you are so lucky if you get to do that as a teenager, because so many people don't get to do that ever or until they're much older. And so then when you're collaborating on other projects with people who've had that experience, the projects are that much raised in terms of their talent and their level because you share those that sort of confidence to be yourself and to bring these projects to life in a very comfortable way based on the relationships you've created.
Abby,
it all boils down.
It all boils down to it. You're right, and you actually triggered a memory of the first time I met you, because you were a national maskira your senior year of high school, and I was a regional senior advisor, and I was flown in by your maskira in Jaffee to kind of help field trip the National Midwinter Convention. And Jeremy Goldberg and I got caught in a snowstorm on the way. We had to spend an extra night in Detroit, and so we were late to the convention. And, because I was 21 years old and totally irresponsible, we overslept and ended up checking out of the hotel. We made the flight, but we checked out of the hotel 1 o'clock, and the hotel charged us a second night. So I show up at Sprout Lake, and you're there, and you've got your ski vest on, hair pulled back, and your clipboard, and you're running the whole convention. And I'm telling the story to you and Jen Lafer. I'm sort of sheepish because at the time, having an extra $100 on my credit card, was kind of a big deal. And you listen to this whole story, and you sort of rolled your eyes and looked at Jen and just said, just pay it. I got my reimbursement check.
Nice. Nice.
But it was just
yeah, that sounds about right.
That's a great memory, Brian. I love it.
Yeah.
I
see the whole thing.
But all kidding aside, it really is the peer leadership of Young Judea. It puts teenagers in these great positions where they're learning, obviously the skills of the real world and responsibility, and you're doing public speaking, and you're doing programming, and you're doing logistics, and it's really a great experience. And Isaac, you were a regional muskier. You did that, in our region.
And the number one thing about my job that I have to do is make decisions, which Abby makes fun of because I don't do that always for not my job. But I mean, the number one thing I have to do is make a decision. That's how things get made and happen. And don't you dare, that's what you have to do when you're, a peer leader, is make decisions and trust yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we've got bunk 3 and bunk 10 waiting for your kiddos.
Yes.
What is it? In 6 years, summer of 2027, whenever it is, we'll be ready for them.
We're in. We're in.
Beautiful.
And hopefully they can pay it forward. I'm having too much fun, and so at this point I'm just gonna someone's gonna have to yank me out of here. If do we still have a few minutes, or is there something from the chat that we need to make sure we get in for Isaac and Abby?
Whoever asked if we know the Wirtschafter family, yes,
Yes,
we know them and love them. That's the one that caught my eye.
Excellent.
That was Elaine. I remember now that I see Elaine. Yes, we know and love them. Marnina Wirtschafter, we know all of them, but Marnina and Isaac work together creatively a lot too for each other.
She's really funny, really talented.
Yes.
So with just a few minutes left, are there any stories that you wanted to tell that you just didn't have an opportunity just because the conversation went this way or that? Anything that you want us to know?
Well, we were going to tell the story about the Moyle. This was just a funny LA story. There might have been, I think Brian had a picture. Because when he asked me to send pictures, I just was pulling through, and this is the funniest LA story. When we finally had our kids, Isaac is working on a documentary about Moyles in general, and thinks it's the whole Briss culture. There's so much there.
It was a really big deal. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay. So there's our Moyles on the left, and Isaac in the middle, and Haley Joel Osment on the right. So Haley and our family have become very close friends since working on Sex Ed together, and Isaac made a spreadsheet of which Moyle did which and how many brisses have they done, and he was really this is our one shot. We need an amazing Moyle.
And they have amazing Moyles here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we made this decision to hire this wonderful Moyle, Rabbi Dembo, and all of a sudden, I look over and I see him asking Haley Joel Osment if he can take a photo with him at the bris. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. No, don't leave Haley alone, at a bris. Anyway, he was a wonderful Moyle, but he then invited me to like his Facebook page. And so I went onto his Facebook page and liked it and saw that from every single LA bris he has a different photo with whatever celebrity might be there. And I'm like, that is such a weird LA story. It didn't bother me at all. And it certainly didn't bother Haley. Haley thought it was hilarious, but he has him and Milo Ventimiglia and him and like all these crazy celebrities. It's like his thing.
So there's some models also want to be actors, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look,
he
it's-
then confided that he ultimately did want to be an actor when he grew up, but the family business was being a mohel, and so that's why he went into it. So I don't know. That was just like a really hilarious LA story. Hi, Julie and Rachel.
All things considered, it's not the worst souvenir you could take from a bris.
That's
No,
true.
that's right.
That's very
definitely
true.
not the worst.
It's very true.
And that was or was not Simi Klimo in the background of that picture.
I wish
was
it
not.
was. I wish
No.
he was there.
It did look like him.
Right.
It's great to see Jason Astley. We're scrolling through.
And now we can look through a
I
little
love
bit.
seeing you.
I saw multiple Ravens here at some point. Hi,
Right.
Ravens. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
That's great. No, this is actually a great time to sort of look around, and I think we'd love to just keep this open. I think Ellen, you had some closing thoughts, but
Ryan,
yeah.
thank you for moderating such a beautiful conversation with you. It's just great to talk
Oh,
about.
thank you. I could do it all day, and again, I hope we get to see each other in California,
too.
Ohio, or wherever. And if you guys are able to hang on for another few minutes after the hour, we'd love to just put this open. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was amazing, guys. Let's all give these guys a round of applause for their time, for their honesty, for everything. This was wonderful. Brian, thank you for moderating. You did a wonderful job. And Isaac and Abbe, I'm a proud madricha. What can I say? There were so many different things that you said today that were just, I loved how you guys talked about renewing your vows when you were pregnant and your just general enthusiasm for family and for life and for camp and your beautiful relationship. So thank you. And like I said at the beginning, we're hoping to create more alumni events, probably after camp. And if anyone's interested in getting involved, you can contact me directly, or you can reach out through Young Judea. There's a lot of great stuff online. There are videos, guys, and there's photos and contact information for alumni. So check it out. Like Brian said, we're going to keep this open for a few more minutes so Isaac and Abbe can answer your questions. But thank you all for being here. It's been so much fun. Brian?
Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun. I think we can take everyone off mute.
Hi, everybody. So good to see you guys. We love Abbe and Isaac.
I know that voice.
That sounds like some Ruskins.
Wait a minute. Now that the program is officially over, can I tell my story that you guys left out? Thank you very much. When you both moved to LA, and I remember I had just met my husband to be, and I get a phone call from Isaac, and Isaac says, "So, tell me about this Abbe girl. She's cute. She's funny." And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, yes, Abbe and Isaac." And the rest is it.
We should have named our daughter Julie.
Obviously.
Obviously. I love that story.
Me too. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And Ellen was our madricha in 1991, Isaac.
Oh my
There was 90. In 91, I did second session, Julie. We were not together.
That's crazy.
I'm going to have to find some pictures. Definitely need to go back.
I was second session 91, and that's when Brian was my madrich. It was Chalutzi 1991.
And Ellen was, right.
91.
When did you start going?
Did you go 92, Isaac?
Sorry?
Did you go 92 at all?
I did go 92, and I was
First
back
session or
first
second?
session. First session.
Oh, then
In
I must have crossed
my
paths.
grandparents had a 50th wedding anniversary in 91, so I went second session.
Okay. I was there in 92, and I was just trying to figure out if our paths
Nice to
crossed
see
while I
you.
was there. So good to see you.
Hi.
So Isaac, you and Abbe missed each other because Abbe, you were just there like first session in 95, and Isaac, you were there second session?
95 was my machon year. So,
Right.
Oh, you were in Israel, right, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to say hi to Mary Stone Tesler, who was my madricha, and also to Libby, who was my co-madricha when we were counselors at CYJ Midwest.
Hey, Libby.
For Sophie, right? Or Ophrim, Ophies.
I think it was Sophie. because I remember we had this is awful, but this is when the song was popular. We had a cheer that was like, I'm too sexy for Sophie. I'm too sexy for Sophie.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Why do I remember that?
Amazing.
I think Brian Jaffee would be great for a documentary for doing some of the voice work. Just saying.
Agreed. Let's do your demo, Brian. We'll do some VO stuff.
You know, I got, you know, you do what you do well. I'm gonna stick with this Jewish communal philanthropy work.
Did you have any Jewish Sasha Baron Cohen? Like, did you and Sasha have any? Did you guys would do Shabbat?
I mean, yes, so that was. I mean, he really is. This was cool, and I mean, he really is Shomer Shabbat on the road. So we would always shut down, and his security were former Mossad and really awesome people. And like I was on the road, we would make like Kiddush every Friday night together, and that was really nice. And it is nice to be able to hang in when he does everything in Hebrew, if necessary, to communicate with him as if I was someone who could also speak his language, and that works in, you know.
He does a lot of
Oklahoma
Hebrew
and
in the
Texas and stuff
film.
like that,
You kind of can't tell that
Right.
it's Hebrew because he does it in
His
like his weird
Kazakh is actually Hebrew.
Hebrew. Oh
Hebrew,
yeah.
and he just makes
was
it
like
a
in the
little
first
weird,
movie
but,
too.
like, yeah.
So,
that's
you know,
fun.
so I know like you guys have twins, right? And he is a twin, correct? So I think my sister is like a colleague of his. Maybe it's not his twin brother; it's his brother, Simon Baron Cohen.
Brother, oh, right on.
I didn't know that.
I only know his brother Eran, who does music with him. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a great family.
Great family.
So what's next for you?
I'm actually doing these interviews for a new startup that I've been directing for called Book Club, and I'm interviewing authors, which is really cool and really interesting. And I'm doing that. I just was in Salt Lake City this week filming an interview with an author. So I'm doing that. I also I have a Netflix project, but it's supposed to film the first 2 episodes in Dubai, and I just don't know how soon that can really be. And there's nothing to really do until that goes. So I don't even, you know, Abby's probably gonna make fun of me for
No, I'm not
bringing it
making
up,
fun of. It's just like that is our life. A lot of like, oh my God, I got this job, and then it might not shoot or move forward for another year, 2 years, 3 years. So
like it's really fun when they don't pay you until you're rolling. So
Right.
I mean, that really sucks. So
again, I always say, like, until I'm on set, I don't believe I booked a job. Much like until my children physically came out, I did not believe I was really pregnant. So it's just
yeah, there's a lot of
sense
reality. It's not real till it's real. But so like that's what I'm doing. I'm doing these interviews with authors until some things open up further and change, and you can really make plans to film some other things.
Awesome.
But it's tech. Yeah, it's tech. It's kind of like Masterclass without it. It's the best. If any of you guys have seen Masterclass, what those looking for, like it's like those.
Cool.
And I am like all over the place, which I enjoy my life like that. I do a lot of things I do multiple things that fill me, depending on the month or day or year. Some are there here and some are there, but I'm an artist in residence with an incredible theater company here in LA called The Braid. And when it was first created, the main primary goal was to highlight voices of Jewish women. So falling into them made perfect sense, but also like I couldn't even believe there was such a thing. And it was created by a bunch of television writers in LA who felt like they were always writing everybody else's stories, but not their own. And so we are dedicated to amplifying the Jewish female voice. It is not only women and it is not only Jewish, but that is a through line in all of our shows. So that has also exploded during pandemic because people who were never able to come to the shows in person previously we've been doing Zoom shows the whole year, which has been amazing. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm now a fertility coach at In Circle Fertility, which is, I partnered with somebody who I actually coached through her journey. And I literally fell into this. To my benefit, there are no real, it's kind of still the wild, wild west in terms of fertility coaches. So you don't have to be a medical professional to walk people through their journey. And so because of our podcast, people would reach out all the time and say like, you know, they would give me, okay, I'm on my forced transfer, day this, and this is going on. Like, what should I do? Should I switch doctors? Should I do another round? Should we give up? Should I go to a surrogate? And it was just like default coaching all these people. And I was like, I think this is what I'm meant to do. So I had coached a friend of mine who's a social worker. And so she and I together founded Encircle Fertility. And it's been just, I love it. I love it. I just love being able to take some of the load off what the stress that these women and couples are carrying. Because to say we know what it's like is an understatement. So I do that. And then I'm also about to hopefully start on a new podcast, which kind of fuses all these things together. It will feature infertility stories of the people who I interview, but we'll start with their successes in life, and then talk about how their the challenging path to motherhood got them to those successes. So it'll be a little bit of career and a little bit of infertility. So that's kind of the nutshell, I would say.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Thanks.
So there's still a bunch of folks on this. Guys, take yourselves off mute. And if there are things you wanted to ask Isaac and Abbe, go ahead.
Hey, this is Elaine. I don't really have a question. I just want to say,
Hi,
hey,
Elaine.
Isaac,
Great to
I spent a
see
musty
you.
root weekend at your house when you hosted us when I was region director, and Brian
Yes.
was senior advisor. So that's just like,
It's
it's so
great to
cool
see
to
you.
see where you've come. And yes, it's great to see you. And Abbe, I'm
thanks.
sorry I didn't know you, but our family is huge Pushing Daisies fans. So I was very excited to see that on your IMDb page. So
I love you. That was one of my favorite things I ever did.
So thank you. Today has been amazing. It's been really great to hear from you both, and sharing your
Good to
story
see you.
is
So good to see
great.
you.
Thanks.
So sweet.
Oh wow, I didn't know there was a word chapter in Kentucky. Linda, thanks for telling me. Also, hi.
Yeah, hi, great to see you guys, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with us. This was really wonderful.
Thank you.
You know, we spent lots of time in old years dropping kids off at the Feder household.
Yes, yes.
And still really appreciating it, because what would happen was Heather, David, and Mike each had their own friendship networks in Chicago. And we would drive up to Chicago for the weekend, drop a kid off at each friend's house, and Leon and I would have an incredible weekend without kids.
Yeah.
Thanks to your parents for babysitting. We greatly appreciate it.
Jordan and David.
Yeah, the Wirtschafter's, Rabbi Wirtschafter's father was on staff at the University of Kentucky Med Center. And he was actually born in Lexington. And a couple of years ago, the rabbi position came open at Temple Adeth Israel, which is the Reform congregation. And he accepted the position, and lucky for us, came back to Lexington. But he's actually just been back visiting his family in LA. So I don't know if you had a chance to run into them in the last week and possibly see him, but yeah.
Amazing.
And also,
we're not running around too much yet.
Yeah, I definitely slept on the floor at your house at least twice.
Excellent.
Was there a loft something? I sort of remember a loft.
Each of the bedrooms has a loft. Absolutely.
Yes. Remember the loft. And also, I did not know that Anna was doing a blog about breastfeeding, but
it's Anna's sister Galit, who lives in Israel.
Okay.
And she is doing a blog and also a Facebook page called Mother Milk as a support, and it's a fabulous series that she's doing on that.
Okay.
And the experience that you've gone through made me think of what she's gone through in breastfeeding and how she's also done the same move to help other people.
I love it.
Amazing. Friends, I think we're going to wrap up here. Isaac and Abbe, just huge thank you to you for your time and for reconnecting with us. This has been so wonderful, and can't wait to do it again.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone so much. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Lots of love.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.